In this episode of Hunker Down Guide, we're going to talk about tree damage from a hurricane. Now, we were hit here in Tampa in October 2024 by Hurricane Milton, and it was a strong Category 3 with winds up to 120 miles an hour when it came in. And in the area where I live, close by to here, we had hundreds and hundreds of trees fall down, oak trees, pine trees, you name it, even palm trees. I saw some palm trees down. But usually all that stuff gets cleaned up, especially after over a year later. But in this case, we're in a park called Lettuce Lake Park in Tampa. And there are a lot of trees that fell down here. And of course, it's a park, so that's all part of nature. And they don't, haul away the trees. So we're going to see some examples here of what you can sometimes see with a really strong hurricane. Now, this area is at least 10 miles from the bay, and Tampa Bay is a very large body of water, but it's protected. But then the Gulf is probably about 15 to 20 miles away, further away from where we are at. So to give you some idea how far inland this kind of damage took place. And so the first trees we're going to look at are these pine trees that I'm standing in right here. So I'm going to switch around and you can see these are quite large pine trees, and typical of Florida. And you can see oak trees around. There are a lot of oak trees fell down too. But these are very, very large trees, diameter. And in the past, the only pine trees I've seen would snap off like halfway up. When I saw one that was twisted, these are in earlier storms in my neighborhood. But in this storm, the wind was blowing so strong that it actually tore these guys out by the roots. And here's one, the same type of tree that we just saw standing there alive, and this one is dead. So this is a very substantial tree. You can see the bark has fallen off over the past year, but here's another companion tree to it next door, and it also fell in the same direction, so you can tell which way the wind was blowing. But in this case, the roots were torn right out of the ground, and the whole thing fell. Again, to give you some idea of the size, these are pretty substantial trees. So you can imagine if your house was over here and there were trees and the wind was blowing, this could be something to think about. And here's another dramatic example of a tree that was sheared off during Milton. And again, if this was in a neighborhood, obviously it would have been cleaned up all during the past year. But in a park, a nature park, it's just part of nature. So you can see the force on that trunk of that tree just snapped it off about 6 feet up off the ground, and it's still embedded in that big oak tree over there. This park is just full of giant trees that have fallen like this. But not every tree fell, of course, just a few here and there. And, back in our neighborhood, I did an informal survey, and it looked to me like, especially the oak trees that fell, all had like rotted spots inside of the trunks. So I think one of the key things you can do in an off-season time like now, this is filmed in January of 2026, would be to get an arborist and have them, look at your trees on your property, especially close to your house, or if you park in an area, because this kind of damage we see right here is possible even with a Category 3 storm that landed officially as a strong Category 3 with 120 mile an hour winds. And by the time I got up here, who knows, it's at least 90 to 100 mile winds, but there could have been gusts and little tornadoes and things that went through. I know in our neighborhood, there were trees that must have been at least, 50, 60 years old, big oak trees that fell, pine trees, and even a palm tree, which I will say palm trees usually don't seem to fall in storms, but, did see one laying over top of a truck. So just wanted to give you an idea of something, and also a tip, really have somebody, a professional, look at your trees and have them trimmed back, and think about planting trees further away if you have a larger piece of property, and kind of changing your landscape over time. With that, thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful.